Welcome to GMspiration. Hello and welcome. This is Harley from the future, jumping in before the main video. I recorded the video you're about to see not long after doing the last video, and I probably have made a lot of assumptions about what you know about the Hard-to-Destroy Reptile. So I thought I'd jump in and add some background so you understand what it is we're trying to make. In this video, I'm going to go through and create a monster stat block for the Hard-to-Destroy Reptile. This will be using D&D 2024 rules. Before I do, let's talk about what it is. This is SCP-682, the Hard-to-Destroy Reptile. It is a large, reptilian creature that seems to be impossible to destroy, let alone kill. It regenerates from all wounds and has the ability to reactively adapt to attacks. So if you shoot it with a laser, it might develop a reflective carapace. If you use a flamethrower, it might develop pores that produce thick, mud-like, flame-resistant mucus. Against a creature that attacks when you can't see it, it grew dozens of eyes. So the challenge is to create a creature that cannot be destroyed and continually regenerates. The challenge for the players would be to get that creature into a specific area rather than destroy it. So we're not making something that can be killed, we're making something that must be contained. The Hard-to-Destroy Reptile is adaptive, unkillable, and unpredictable. In many of the stories, there is also the rage state that the reptile can enter, but I've not touched on that. Instead, I would say when it is fully using its adaptive abilities, it would be enraged. So with that, let's dive in. Hi, welcome to this episode of GMspiration. Today I'm going to be doing something a little bit different in that I'm going to take an SCP, one of the ones that was discussed in the last video, and turn it into a creature stat block. So I've picked the Hard-to-Destroy Reptile. For inspiration, I'm going to be using Tarask, although you'll see me jump to some other creatures as we go through. First things first, I've gone with the huge size. That seems about right for the creature based on the scale. It's definitely not gargantuan. It could potentially be large, but I'm going to say more likely to be huge. That part might be up to you. So after we've done this, we're going to now look at the AC. I'm going to run through the top of the stat block, go all the way down, and then probably jump around a little bit. AC 22 is not, it's not an insubstantial amount. I'm basing this off a dragon stat block, but I'm going to be copying the Tarask across. 22 is pretty good. I want them to be able to hit it, but the amount of life being the thing that we really focus on. I'm going to copy that across. Speed, climb, burrow, but not fly seems correct. We'll just take that here. Really the key to doing this is trying not to make it too difficult for yourself. Strength, our Tarask has a 30. That's not too bad. Strength's going to be its main attack stat. So having a plus 10 on its attacks means that if you go down, you start having things like plus 19 on the hit. That means it's pretty much guaranteed to hit targets unless they have some crazy way of defending. 10. Now this Tarask stat block on the right, even though Roll20 did say this was 2024, but it looks more like 5e to me, and it does say 5e at the top. Anyway, main difference here is that the 2024 ones have these nice little tables where everything sits in, whereas the earlier ones have the saving throw section down here. That's all right, we can fix that. Dexterity 10, that seems correct. Not a huge impact, but it's dexterity. Let's go plus 9. Its dexterity means that it's more likely to get caught by spells that require dex saves. Con 30, that is definitely what we want for our creature because it's got not only high hit points but high con. So con saves. The other thing to think about is if I had not changed this and left it at plus 10, technically I'd need to go and update the hit points because that is based off the con of plus 10, which is why it's got 34 d20s and then 34 here, because each of those d20s it also has plus 10 to. Intelligence, I want my one to be a bit more intelligent, but not necessarily super intelligent. That seems about right. This one gets to add plus 9 to its save. Might leave mine at a 3. Just considering whether I make it a bit dumber. I think that should be okay. Wisdom, I'm going to leave, got a +9. Its passive perception is quite high. That should be all right. Text that down to 0. Another +9. Charisma is 19. Charisma in D&D is often like force of will. And the Hard-to-Destroy Reptile definitely has a high force of will. I think I might leave it at 19. This would make it a 13 on its charisma saves. I think that's right. Charisma often is used for protecting against mind control effects. Wisdom sometimes as well. That's fine. So here we have no proficiency bonus to strength or con, but we do have it for wisdom and intelligence. That seems about right. Skills, we've got perception +9. Resistance. Do I want to give it resistance? I think the point of this is that it adapts. So I don't need to give it resistances because it'll change to adapt as it goes through. Senses, blind sight, 60 feet. I think I'll give it dark vision, but not blind sight. Again, I want it to adapt rather than have a lot of default abilities. Perception +9. So passive perception is 10 plus its perception skill, which is 9. Perception skills based on wisdom plus proficiency in this case. So that is 19. Languages, I'm going to put down all. Challenge rating, this is definitely going to be a top tier 30. Just a couple of the EXP across from here. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, so 150,000. Proficiency is +9. That's the other thing about the new sheet. Calls out proficiency, whereas this one doesn't. Legendary resistance, as you can see, this is based off the Ghost Dragon, so it does not have incorporeal movement. Legendary resistance, we're going to have 6. So if I think I might just call it reptile, so I don't have to copy more than one word. Unusual nature. Yeah, it's probably a good one. Reptile doesn't require food, air, drink, or sleep. Do I want to give it the siege monster? It's large, it's strong. All right, I'll add this one in. Siege monster doesn't often come up, but it does sometimes trigger when it's trying to smash its way through objects, through doors, and the like. So in my last video, I talked about 2 abilities. Magic Adapt. Might change that to Adaptation. And Physical Adaptation. I'm not calling it 682, we're calling it the Reptile. So, now in the video when I provided those descriptions, it was fairly vague, so I didn't put like many time limits or practical limits on how it could be used. That was because I didn't really know the context. So if the plan is that this all happens within a combat, everything needs to be spaced out in terms of your 6-second blocks and your action economy. If it's something that happens over the course of days, then you're more likely to think about things in terms of like, it takes 10 minutes to adapt. If the whole thing's in a combat though, and an ability takes 10 minutes, then, well, it's not really going to have the same effect. What you could do though is actually have a mixture. Yeah, so if we made it so that it can adapt. Yeah, so it can adapt any number of times using magic adaptation or physical adaptation, taking 10 minutes, but as a free action on the start of its turn, it might be limited to only doing that a certain number of times a day, so you can burn through them. I have to think about what a good number for that is. Oh, unless it's a recharge ability. So there's a chance that it recharges at the start of each of its turns. That's not bad. So it might be like a recharge 3. Well, I remember if we're going to add regeneration, The reptile can be reduced to negative 100 hit points if it has one or more hit points. Now, if I was doing this just for myself, that would probably be enough. If I was writing it for someone else, I would need to explain this a bit more. Doesn't really make sense. So, unkillable. The reptile cannot be killed. Instead, it has a negative pool of hit points. If it has 0 or less hit points at the start of its turn, it does not act and it ends its turn. If it has 0 or less hit points at the start of its turn, it does not act and ends its turn. Okay, if it has 1 or more hit points, it... Now, what you probably add some context to this using some background. It's quite often, if I scroll up, I don't know if I've got any here. I don't think I do. It's quite often at the start you'll have, I'll use this other page, you'll have something like this where it sort of just talks about, right at the top, talking about how it works. So here it just gives an indication, so on the right side of my screen, where it talks about how a Tarrasque is, how it works, what it does, things to think about. So this one talks about how it's a creature of tireless rage. Lashes out at any creature that catches attention, thrashing with claws and mighty tail while swallowing smaller beings whole. Seems to take instinctual offense to the works of lesser beings, venting its rage in building. So all that provides context. So we could provide something similar in terms of context for our Hard-to-Destroy Reptile at the front, but I don't want to make this video super long, so instead I'm going to stick to getting the abilities down. I think this makes sense. This triggers before killable. Just make sure that's clear. So it regenerates before unkillable. This triggers unkillable. No, it triggers before unkillable. Make sure that that's done before unkillable ends its turn. So if we're going to do magic adaptation, I like the idea of having a number, but what is a good number? Magic adaptation takes an ability to not be affected by a spell. How many spells would I want it to be resistant to at once? If I said it was resistant to, say, 10, that's probably too many. 5 might be a little bit too many. So a Wall of Force, Banish. Ooh, someone could make the argument around something like Banishing Smite versus Banish. Whereas I've said the specific spell. So Otterlug's Resilient Sphere and Wall of Force are very similar but different. Okay, well. Magic adaptation. Let's just start writing. The best way to get through a blockage is to write and see what happens. The reptile can adapt to a single magical spell or effect, such as a magic item. Prior to the start of its turn, so that's important because we've got a whole bunch of stuff triggering at the start of its turn, it rolls, pick the right rolls, it rolls to recharge its magical adaptation. If possible, it can then choose to adapt to one such magical effect. Reptile can have up to 4 magical adaptations. I guess this is probably the lesser of the 2 abilities in that some of the things it can physically adapt to are pretty crazy, including greater magic resistance and stuff like that. So we probably don't have to be too crazy with this one. Spells that create Magical walls such as Wall of Force do not stop the reptile's movement if it has adapted to them. Okay, perfect. Adaptation done. Physical adaptation. Okay, can adapt to a... Get rid of single because that doesn't make sense now. To magical spell or effect. Yep. I'm going to just copy this because I like some of the text in it. Reptile can adapt. Can... Cool, so that is very broad, but that's good. We want it to be broad. The real consideration here is 682 can do things like grow tentacles, cover itself with eyes. When it fought the statue, it had eyes pull around its head so that it could see it no matter what. Do I want this to trigger at the start of its turn? I mean, it's pretty shocking, which is what we're going for here. So I'm going to say yes. I'm going to go with 4. Don't know why I did that. Physical. Adaptations. Yep. You can see I've gotten rid of the day stuff. Yeah, it's hard to really plan for how someone's going to use something. So if it was the case where you decided that the ability took, say, 10 minutes to adapt to, and then you kept it for 3 days, it's a very different type of game. Maybe to make it a bit easier, we could add in that the reptile cannot adapt, can unadapt from one adaptation to the other. So it'll have to end. So if it's got all 4 going, it'll have to end one and then adapt to the next one on the next turn. So if it grows tentacles, so it can lash people with tentacle attacks, and then it wants to grow wings, it would need to lose the tentacles one turn, grow wings the other. But I think the point of this is how chaotic it will be to fight against, in which case having them both trigger on the same turn reptile must replace one of its 4 adaptations when choosing a new one. Now in terms of this is interesting, right? Because here what we're doing is building the actions for it, knowing that it's going to be able to draw other actions in. So do we want to give it multi-attack? I think we do, but we probably just will keep it to 2 bite attacks. So its default is a bite. Maybe a claw. Copy this across. Ooh, it's freaking out. You there, keep the same text style. All right, let's have a look. So reach is 15 feet, noting that the Tarask is gargantuan. So I'm going to lower this to 10 feet and change the tail to 15 feet. Plus 19 still stays the same. I don't want it to instantly swallow things though. I just want it to... so we're going to keep the... So this is very similar to the crocodile's attack. Where it bites something, becomes grappled, and then is restrained. I might get rid of the teleport limit. Keep the tail in. How does the Tarask do this? 1 bite and 3 other attacks using claw, tail, or any combination. Maybe it does 1 of each. Makes 1 bite. And 1 tail attack. Cool, tail attack. Distance is fine. Prone condition is fine. Grapple is fine. Restrained is fine. Bonus action swallow. We're not taking that one. Legendary actions. Okay. Now, I'm tempted to say... Oh, actually. Physical adaptations, like add in legendary actions. So reaction or legendary actions belonging to other creatures, belonging to another creature in existence. So if we add in legendary actions, with the right formatting, why it's being so difficult with the spacing. Okay. If you haven't read it, there's actually one of... I can't think of his name. What's his name? Blackwood? Blackthorn? Blackwood. There is one example of Lord Blackwood where he talks about fighting a Tarrasque. So a Tarrasque is a mythical creature, in case you're unaware. Tarrasque, just spelled wrong. French mythological creature. That's D&D. Still D&D. Still D&D. What is going on here? Jeez, okay. This is getting really annoying. So if that's... Let's just go French. Yeah, there we go. The lion turtle. So this is the original form of the Tarrasque based on French lore, mythic lore. So it is more of this sort of dragon, turtle, lion-headed thing. Yeah, and there is a story of Lord Blackwood fighting the Tarrasque, which probably realized what a buried lid here, but it turns out to be the Hard-to-Destory Reptile. So he fires an experimental gun, stuns it, they take it back, then it regenerates and comes back to life, and everyone flees. I love the Lord Blackwood stories. Okay. So we've got our legendary actions. Legendary actions have 3 uses. I'll just put in a holding one. The reptile does not have any legendary reactions that it has not adapted. It can, however, use one use. Use this legendary action to insult someone or threaten to kill them. Cool. All right. So here is our stat block. Let's just run through it again. So we've got a Hard-to-Destroy Reptile, huge monstrosity, chaotic evil, AC 22. Initiative is +6. I don't know if that's right. So if we give it proficiency, it will be +0, which is +9. And its passive will therefore be 19. This is something I do like about the new D&D structure, is that they have a little initiative thing and that they can just give you a standard. If you're like me and you don't want to roll initiative for a whole bunch of monsters, you can just group them together based on their passive initiative. Now, does it need burrow or climb? I did like the idea of it having these, but the more I think about it, the more I think it doesn't fit in with our blank slate way of doing it, where the default one doesn't have it, but if it wants to grab it from another thing as one of its adaptions, that's fine. Dark vision, 120 feet. Yep, that's pretty standard languages. I don't really want them to have to adapt dark vision, but it could adapt true sight. Proficiency, these little circles there are from copying and pasting. Reptile fails saving throw. Yep, can repeat it 6 times. Unusual nature. Yep. Double damage siege monster. Yep. Regeneration happens first. Magic adapt prior to the start of its turn. Yep. Prior to the start of its turn. Yep, good. Multi-attack, so it's quite strong by itself, doing... what's the average of that? There is a mathematical way of figuring it out. or you can just chuck it in at pretty much is much quicker. 36. 3d8. Boop. Analyze 23. 24. Awesome. So hard hits, but not, unstoppable. Now, this is where it gets interesting, because we want to add in some example adaptations. So these are going to be our standard ones that we can draw upon. This is really up for anyone to add anything they want. The only thing I would say is pick them from proper creatures. Don't make up your own, because the whole point of this is that it takes them from other people. Why aren't you queen? All right, monsters bar CR. I want 2024 D&D. Shouldn't have fucked in there. AD&D. 2024 monsters. Sweet. So max 30. Yep. 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 Go by CR. So I'm probably going to start at the high end. So, well, first, I guess we should start with the Blob of Annihilation. Getting all my ancients in here. Lich, Archhag. Now, what I would say is I wouldn't let it take spells. So it might get like a Finger of Death ability from something, but I wouldn't give it the ability to cast spells. So one thing I would say is to not use stuff that requires an item like Fiery Mace. That could be something that once you trial this a little bit, we will add that in. So obviously we've got magic resistance here, but we've got a better magic resistance that we're going to use. Fear Aura, yeah, it's probably a good thing to start off with. Go with that here. This is from the Pit Fiend. Just for my own interest, CR20, Pit Fiend, Fear Aura. Don't care about that, don't care about that. It's got a bite attack. Ooh, it's a good bite attack. I think I want this. Cool, awesome. Probably keep this. So keep the plus 14. Moving on, Archhag.
1 hour later.
Okay, through the magic of editing, we have a pretty big list which we can draw upon. So run through the ones that I settled on, and this is by no means the perfect list, but it is what I've put together for the first cut. We have the Lich's Paralyzing Touch, legendary actions of Deathly Teleport and Disrupt Life. Find movement's always incredibly important when taking on a large amount of enemies, and when you've got something like a teleportation that does damage, it can be really useful. From the Solar, took 2 legendary actions, Blinding Gaze and Radiant Teleport. Another teleport, but this one does damage where it lands. The Blinding Gaze is like a gaze that blinds. The more damaging one a little bit later. From the Colossus, this one had a 300-foot True Sight, so I've added that in as a potential one. A Radiant Beam of Energy, doing 22 radiant damage and knocking them prone. And then a Divine Beam, which does more damage and turns creatures to dust if they are reduced to 0. Kraken, I know it's a 120-foot swim speed, don't know if we'll need that. Then it had Tentacle Attack, which was pretty good, so I've thrown that in, and a Lightning Strike. Pit Fiend, we have Bite and Fear Aura. I imagine starting with the Fear Aura might be useful and then moving to the other ones. Empyrean had a Divine Ray and a Shockwave legendary action. Tarask, Reflective Carapace, Thunderous Bellow, and World Shaking Movement. World Shaking Movement was legendary. Let's put that in there. Dragon Breaths. I've copied all the Dragon Breaths down. So your hard-to-kill reptile can choose any dragon breath to add. So put all those in here and who they're from. From the Dow, we had Earth Glide, just allowing it to burrow and move around. Remoras. We got a Heat Aura. Not sure how useful that'll be, but you know, at the end of its turns, it kind of releases this boom, doing 16 damage to anything around it. Notice there is no save. It's quite useful. Rakshasa, as I mentioned in the other video, we have our greater magic resistance, meaning it automatically passes. That's almost a must to have. Death Tyrant, we've got a negative energy cone that can't regenerate hit points at the start of the Death Tyrant's next turn. And it can also raise zombies. Quite useful. There's probably might be some way to get something that makes zombies, but anyway. Mummy Lord, we have a reaction that allows them to turn into a whirlwind of sand. Purple Worm, we have Tail Stinger and Tremor Sense. There's probably a better Tremor Sense out there, but I copied that one for now. Goliath's Blight, it had a Thorn Volley, just a range attack doing 20 piercing damage. There's might be some other ones, but that just seemed like a good one to grab. Iron Golem, Fire Absorption. And whenever it takes fire damage, it instead regains. There may be some way to double up on some of these, but for now, I'll leave it as that. Iron Golem also had a Poison Breath attack. Marilith, we've got the reactive, that's a very good one. One reaction every round of combat. Also had a Constrict with Grapple, and a bonus action teleport ability. 120 feet teleport, that is a recharge. I did find a better one from the Balor. So it's a bonus action teleport 60 feet. Not quite as long, but no recharge. Death Knight, Hellfire Orb. I have fond memories of half a party getting wiped out as a player from a Death Knight's Hellfire Orb. Put that one in there. Good thing is there's fire and necrotic. The Yocholo, we had Toxic Escape, which allows it as a reaction to teleport. So if you've got that and the other reaction one, you can do a lot of reactions each turn. And that is it for now. There are obviously a lot more. Haven't gone through all of them. There might be just some random things spread around which you might want to grab. I haven't put in resistances. I figured just gaining a resistance itself would be a physical adaptation, so you wouldn't need to write down each one. Would say it's probably not a good idea to grab, all the resistances from something. I'll just grab one, but I'll grab it as an immunity. That brings us probably to the towards the end of this video. So just to recap, we have our Hard-to-Destroy Reptile. Its stat block, its main interesting sections are probably these 4 abilities. Pretty simple actions, pretty simple legendary actions. And then we have our adaptation list. Transfer list. Where we then have listed all the different things that you can have at hand that you can pull in and use. Some of these I'll probably go through and remove some of them, whether or not it's particularly interesting to have, whether or not you think you're going to use it. Some of these are almost must-haves. I think the Marilith reactive is definitely a standout. Where's he gone? Rakshasa, greater magic resistance. That means it automatically succeeds on saving throws against spells and other magical effects. And attack rolls with spells automatically miss it. So this would be something you just need to think about. Yeah, I think your party would probably work very hard to get rid of this, but yeah, it is supposed to be an impossible challenge where failure is just as good as success. Well, I'm going to wrap up there. Thanks everyone for listening to this episode of GMspiration. I hope you got something out of turning a ridiculous creature from a different source into a D&D creature. And yeah, most importantly, remember to have fun.